Hello and welcome to our webcast for May 12, 2017. My name is Christian Debré and this is Amy Asbrook, the director of Toujours Vivant, Not Dead Yet.
Hello.
Toujours Vivant, Not Dead Yet, Toujours Vivant, Not Dead Yet, is a non-religious organization for and by people with disabilities and our allies. Our goal is to inform, unify, and give voice to the disability rights opposition to assisted suicide, euthanasia, and other end-of-life practices that discriminates against people with disabilities. Today's topics: frequently asked questions. So Amy Asbrook will talk about it in a few seconds.
Yeah, okay. So we're continuing with our frequently asked questions segment. And here's the next question. If jurisdictions that have legalized assisted suicide haven't had any problems, why shouldn't we just follow those models?
A very good question.
It's a good question, and we hear it a lot. But this is not a settled issue. The first part of the question, if they haven't had any problems, that's not that's not a settled issue, despite what the Supreme Court said in the Carter case. Though the courts in the Carter case found no reason for concern over potential abuse in jurisdictions where assisted suicide is legal, the Irish Supreme Court did not agree. In an April 2013 decision, that court affirmed the lower court's assessment of the same evidence used by the BC court in the Carter case.
So that's the trouble. This is exactly the same system.
Right.
The British law with exactly the same way to operate. Everything is exactly the same.
And they reached a different conclusion.
Yeah, so I kind of know why. When the first decision came on, there was not taking care of the argument of disabled people and people, different kind of people, old people, okay?
Right. One of the things that the judge in the first court did is that she said, for example, that Herbert Hendon, who is an expert on suicide prevention, she said that he was biased. Now, the people on the other side were biased too.
Yeah, you could not be half dead.
Right.
You are alive or you are dead.
Right.
So you are biased to one of the two. You
Right.
could not be in the middle.
Right.
It's impossible.
Right. Nobody was in the middle. And, you know, reading through the decision, it really looked like she had already made up her mind before she took the evidence.
She was biased herself. She was for the assisted suicide.
Right.
Normally, in a kind of debate like that, you have people who speak for and people who speak against, and the judge should be kind of neutral and decide.
Right.
That was not the case. She just removed one part of the speech of people, and she keep only one side, and she was on this side. That's it. The decision was made.
Right. So the exact same evidence, when put before the Irish Supreme Court, the Irish Supreme Court in the Fleming case found that there was proof that elders and people with disabilities are at risk of abuse under euthanasia and assisted suicide laws. So that's what the Supreme Court of Ireland found. Same system, same evidence, different outcome. Okay, the Canadian Medical Association Journal, CMHA, published an article in June 2010 that looked at the physician-assisted suicide deaths under the euthanasia law in Belgium. Their findings include, of the 208 physician-assisted deaths, 66 were without an explicit request.
Oops.
Oops. Yeah, indeed. And of those 66 deaths, the decision was not discussed with 78% of those patients.
So 33% of people who receive assisted death,
23%.
Something, receive it without asking it.
Right. Right. Yeah. Yeah. And then
a big oops.
Right. And the doctor said that they didn't talk to the people about whether they wanted assisted suicide because it might be too traumatic.
Oh, they was not thinking that to be dead is more traumatic than to speak about death.
Right. It seemed a little bizarre.
Oh yeah, it's more than a little bizarre. I want to kill you and I will kill you.
Right, kill the people without talking to them about it first. In other jurisdictions where assisted suicide and euthanasia are legal, though doctors are supposed to report writing lethal prescriptions or performing euthanasia, there's no way to ensure that they do. Data are based only on those who file reports.
Yeah, when you look about every happy ending report, do you report over a report is always a happy ending. Okay?
Right, and you can't track euthanasia that's not reported. So all the studies that they do that say, oh, there's no problem, they're based on the reports that the doctors file, and they don't take into account the
case was not filed.
Right.
And there is a lot.
Right, exactly. Problems have been documented in the media and by studies that track the deaths by the cause of death. So they'll take a certain amount of time and look at all of the deaths that happen. And then they track back what caused that death. And what they find is that there are a lot of deaths that are caused by doctors' actions that aren't recorded as assisted suicide or euthanasia.
So they find it because there was a kind of an inquiry, they search for, and it's kind of difficult. It's not 100% proof, but they find that there was a lot. So what happened?
Right, exactly. Studies that only look at reported euthanasia give an unrealistic picture of the situation. In 2010, 23% of the medically assisted deaths in the Netherlands were not counted. The figure is even higher in Belgium.
And we copy Belgium law. Oops.
Right, exactly.
Again.
Canada is, well, Quebec especially, but Canada also has copied essentially the Belgian law. And, you know, we already have some evidence that there might be doctors who are not reporting their assisted suicides. We did a report earlier when we reviewed the first study that Quebec did, and we saw that by the end of the month, by the beginning of the month, they had a certain number, and by the end of the month, they had only a little bit more.
Why not reporting?
Right,
Easy, exactly. Too much paperwork,
right?
Things goes wrong, and you was wrong, okay?
Right.
So if something like that happens, you just don't file up, and nothing happens.
Right. The institutions had reported more assisted suicides than the doctors had. So there was some evidence that doctors weren't reporting their assisted suicides.
So even if there is not really reporting about everything, there is a way to find there is something wrong.
Right. Usually there is, and it's not easy because, you know, obviously if the doctors don't report, you have to dig a little bit, but you can find it. The data from Oregon and other places that allow physician-assisted suicide is unreliable because the facts are hidden or distorted in many ways. First, assisted suicide deaths are not listed as suicides, but due to the underlying illness. And in Oregon especially, they count how many suicides they have, but assisted suicides don't count in that number. And that's a little bizarre because the suicide prevention strategy is based on the number of suicides that are counted. And if they're not counting assisted suicides, then that means they're not supporting the suicide prevention strategy as forcefully as they should.
Yeah, that's the least that you could say.
Right. There is no data collected from doctors who refuse requests for assisted suicide, like why they refused or what happened to the person afterwards.
Yeah, it could go to both sides because it's an important information.
Right.
Why it's not filed.
Right, exactly. Also, though doctors are supposed to report writing lethal prescriptions, there's no way to ensure that they do, so we've already been over that before. Again, this is why the data are unreliable out of Oregon. Drugs are not tracked after this prescription is dispensed.
This is a good one.
Right, so the doctors write the prescription and the person picks up the prescription, but we don't know what happens after that. The drugs could just lay around the house for months and months. Somebody could sell the drugs on the street. The person says, well, I want to have it just in case I decide I really need to.
You could kill somebody else.
Right,
so,
right.
Your choice, okay?
Right.
There's no evidence that somebody will use it properly or just return it to the drugstore or whatever.
Right, and it often happens that the person, the drugs might end up getting used a year later, but the point is that the person wasn't eligible if they died a year later because they're supposed to be
inside the first
within 6 months of being their terminal illness is supposed to be within 6 months of dying.
But nobody knows.
Right, exactly. And finally, after annual statistical reports are produced, the documentation is destroyed, preventing further analysis. So
you need information to track law and what's happened with the law, and you destroy the information. Right, and what if you're reading through the annual report and you see something that's a real anomaly, and you want to dig into that? You can't, because the underlying information has been destroyed. Very good thinking. Very good. Right. And this is something that when I wrote to the head of Health and Human Services, the Minister for Health and Human Services, I said, we need to keep the information on file for a long time so that we can do longitudinal studies. There are few studies on the impact of euthanasia laws on the application of do not resuscitate orders, with or without permission. Use of these orders without permission is already a major problem. And it happens often that people with disabilities who go into the hospital for any kind of procedure are bullied until they sign a do not resuscitate order. And people, a lot of people, is, yes, I will sign do not resuscitate order, but I want it to apply properly. The trouble is there's no properly apply. If you just stop to breathe for any reason, let's say you just catch a bean in your throat somewhere and stop breathing, it will not help you. You will die. Right, exactly. So it doesn't matter why you stop breathing. You stop breathing, they won't resuscitate you. Yeah, that's the trouble. But most people say, if I die because my heart just goes so bad that I should die, I want to, this is my death, okay, let me die. But, if I just have a pneumonia and I could catch up, no, you will never catch up, you will die. Right. Well, the other thing is that people, they don't pressure non-disabled people to sign do not resuscitate orders as much as they pressure disabled people. Disabled people receive a lot of push. My father was pushed. Yeah. I was there. I know witness. Yeah. Okay, the next question. Won't legalizing and regulating assisted suicide reduce the number of wrongful deaths? And that's one claim that the supporters often give, is that, there are already people dying and it's not being registered. So if we legalize it, it'll just bring it out of the darkness, out of the shadows. Wrong. Right. It would be more accurate to say that more deaths are counted and the criteria are enlarged to include more and more people and more practices. So more practices being not just assisted suicide, but euthanasia, and more people being people who, like in the Netherlands, they're trying to push now for people who feel they have a completed life. So even the idea of suffering is taken. Yeah, you're just 40 years old somewhere and, okay, my life was done. I had tried, I had traveled, so I feel just a little bit mushy, I want to die. Right. And they will kill you. Right.
Right. And let's see, if we've learned anything, it's that abuses continue where assisted suicide is legal. We've already talked about the fact that cases aren't reported and that people who are not eligible have been euthanized. That happened in Quebec.
Yeah.
We have 3 examples of
Three
people.
cases that we found.
Right.
Not us that we found, but
The
it
Commission
was
on
found.
End-of-Life Care.
Yeah.
And nothing was done about it. And it was interesting because they were talking this morning about an investigation where they were fining doctors for Medicare fraud, and they're not investigating what happened when these people were killed because they were not eligible for assistance.
But they do complain about the fraud.
Right,
Okay.
exactly.
Life for somebody or fraud. A fraud is more important.
Right, exactly. We've also seen that the eligibility criteria are applied more and more loosely, and that the laws are changed to allow more and more people to be euthanized. This is called the slippery slope.
Yeah.
And
Let's say 3 years ago, the same debate, we said, not we, somebody said slippery slope doesn't exist, there's no proof. Hey guys, look around. It's not even existing. The slope is not a slight slope. It's a very steep slope,
right.
And it's slippery.
Right, exactly. And every few weeks you read of a case in the Netherlands or Belgium where somebody's euthanized who isn't eligible under their criteria. There was the case where the woman was held down to be euthanized because she tried to fight back.
Yeah, normally it's called a murder.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the real name. It's not a euthanasia, it's a murder.
Right, and every few weeks that happens, and people say there's no slippery slope, but more and more people who aren't eligible are euthanized, and so they open up the law to permit more people to be euthanized, and still they euthanize people who aren't eligible under the new criteria. So
yeah, you give an inch and you take a foot.
Right, exactly. The point is that unfortunately the bright line preventing euthanasia and assisted suicide is the best defense. We've gone over that line, we've opened the door, and it's really impossible. It's very difficult to keep it closed.
Yeah, just giving some kind of line. The line could always be just torturous or pushed away.
Right.
Okay, you should not have any line to define.
Right.
Okay, over that is kind of easy control to control, but over that there's no control possible.
Right. Okay. For more information on the topics that we discuss here, you can go to our Facebook page at facebook.com/toujours vivant, not dead yet. You can visit our website at tvndy.ca. You can send us an email at info@tv-ndy.ca, or you can follow us on Twitter @TVNDY. Thanks to Christian for helping out.
Don't forget, we need your witnessing.
Yeah, your testimonial.
Testimony. We need you to do testimony. It's very, very important. If you are shy, we could do something to help you, right. But be sure, send us your testimony.
Yeah.
Have a nice week.
All
Bye.
right.
Take
Bye.
care.